What's up, Benson?
How we doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm in a good mood today. It's a Monday. It's almost 2021. Feeling good.
I was feeling good till you started talking. Let's go back to the music. The end is nigh. Don't let the fact edition.
I mean, we could just go for a live DJ, a couple of sessions. I mean, take some live requests, turn it into like a throwback on TRL.
It can't be worse than what we're doing now, right?
I mean, not much can be. So yeah.
What's going on, man? Hadn't talked to you since I don't know 3 hours ago. So.
I got a haircut this morning. Unclear if it actually looks good on. Yeah, no comment. Got a haircut this morning, and I was talking to the barber, and we were talking about this like sort of sense everyone has of optimism of like, yeah, 2021 is going to be great, and like, yeah, we just gotta get on the other side of the year, and then it's, in reality, it's just like 24 hours later, and so, but at the same time, I think this is the year, or this is the time of year, I should say, that most people are. You're making what some call New Year's resolutions or commitments for next year. I know that I do that. I try to do that on a pretty consistent basis. I try not to have that be kind of an annual thing, but I certainly do go through kind of a debrief process on personal inventory and also business, just sort of setting expectations and go through that process at the end of the year. So I'm in the midst of all that. It's been pretty quiet on the business front, this week.
Let me just ask you this: why do you do it more regularly? It seems like you just set yourself up for more disappointment. Whereas if you did it once a year, Ben, like September, you could be like, whatever. But you just like disappointing yourself often. Is that what you're saying?
So, I mean, you and I talk off air about this concept that I have of, I think I once asked you if you had your druthers, would you rather live in a utopian dystopia or a dystopian utopia?
Already.
And so it's sort of that through that prism. And so the reason I do it on a more consistent basis, I know that you're giving me shit, but it is realistically to it's a self-check mechanism. I think one of the interesting parts about being an entrepreneur and for the most part a solopreneur in a number of the ventures that I'm in. I'm sorry,
not by choice.
Thank you. Through that process, it can be sort of an echo chamber at times, and also kind of a lack of a sounding board.
Hold on.
I'm not sure why he said hold on and then muted himself, but okay. And so I think it's important to go through that process kind of on a more regular basis to maintain course and continue on the trajectory. I'm not sure where if we're playing the narrative that you and I are both failing businessmen. I think that might play poor to our market. But I guess we can lean into that if we want to. That's a weird angle to take, but I'd like to talk about the other side. But I mean, whatever.
I just enjoy the fact, the self-honesty that you being alone could cause there being a echo chamber. It's like,
I don't know. I missed that one, but that happens. It's okay.
You being an echo chamber for yourself. It's okay. Okay. At least you acknowledge it, right?
I mean, I think anyone that's self-aware would also acknowledge it. I don't think it's a Benism, but yeah, I mean, yes, I'm certainly self-aware enough to know that, when I'm the only one soliciting my opinions from myself, then, that can be a.
Yeah, right. So that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that you have bad opinions. Like if you had good opinions, I would be encouraging. I'd be like, Ben, take your own advice here. But that's where we have a little bit of a disconnect. So anyways, Ben, on the 47-page document you sent me of topics that you wanted to go through, if I don't get through all these, you will quit the show. So we're going to slow play this. You have Title 1, real estate. So Distressed hotels being repurposed for lower SES housing. Now, distressed hotels is an interesting topic, and as we wind down the year and go into next year, hotels I think are in for either a nice little rebound in 2021 or a disastrous meltdown. You said they're being repurposed. I'm curious, you think about the hotel market in general, Ben. Where do you think we're headed in 2021? I'm soliciting your advice. This is me.
In the hotel market?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're going to see a massive lag and drag, continuing from Corona, on tourism, and I think one of the main stories that I don't think got any coverage this year is the complete lack of innovation in the current hotel market. There wasn't any real move towards innovation to figure out some way to. I mean, I read a report a couple weeks back that I think there was going to be something like 900. It was it 900 million or 1.2 billion, somewhere in that range, in dollars in revenue lost on the year for, it was just, I think it was MGM. And that was just unsold, unbooked rooms that they just left inventory lying there. And it boggles my mind that there's not like some sort of use case where you can monetize that in some fashion. Off the cuff, I can't necessarily, I don't know necessarily what that would be. But in answer to your question, I mean, I think that so there were a couple of let me pull this up. I was looking at this actually earlier today. There were a couple of SPACs that got spun out of recent that we're going to go out and go acquire.
For folks who don't know what that is, why don't you break that down?
I'm sorry?
For folks who aren't aware of what that is, why don't you?
Special purpose acquisition company. What a special purpose acquisition company is, in brief, is so rather than a group of founders trying to raise money to go start a company and they have this idea that they want to go fund, a SPAC is essentially a blank check, a pool of money that is allocated prior to actually identifying the assets being purchased, or companies usually is in the case in this case. And then once the money is put together, once the investments are funded, then they go make the deals, and the goal is to put some money into those companies, cash infusion, build them up, and then sell out and dissolve the SPAC and rinse and repeat.
Anyways, go ahead now. So SPACs are being spun out too. Hey, when you're bumping your desk, it's picking through up on the mic.
All right. So there have been a number of SPACs that have spun up in the last 9-12 months to go acquire distressed hotels and retrofit them. So rather than keep the hotel inventory, retrofit them into studios and single apartments and also some condos, etc. And I think that's going to be a massive market in the next couple of years. I think there's also going to be a lot of that actually some of the commercial real estate is likely going to be repurposed into some of this lower SES, lower socioeconomic, residential housing and some other use cases in that realm. So I think that's a story that's certainly to watch.
So let me ask you this: is this from because when you think those lower income socioeconomic housing, obviously those aren't the upper class you're appealing to, and so you're going to buying maybe a distressed asset, and then you're going to sell it to lower income individuals on a monthly basis. But I would imagine there's probably some kind of tax credit or tax deference or tax rebate or something that incentivizes groups to do this as well. Because if you can get a hotel for a cheaper for pennies on the dollars, if you will, and you could hold it, then you assume that the travel will come back and you could just go back into the hotel business. So what's the other angle here that would incentivize someone to do this?
I mean, yeah, without diving into it too deeply, because it gets really complex. I mean, there are an unbelievable amount of tax benefits and creative ways to acquire these assets and improve them and have a lot of those dollars funded by by the government. And so yeah, I mean, it's a net on both sides. I think. I mean, you repurpose assets that are just sort of that inventory just sort of sitting there into something that can be useful, but also the investment is sound as well.
So, do you think because I was looking at the hotel numbers. I think I wrote about this in the war room 2 weeks ago, maybe. Anyways, about the number of rooms that were there that are available, and the hotels will need a bailout unless travel just picks up basically overnight to kind of where it was 2019 levels. If you start taking hotels off the market and using them for whatever else, apartments, low income housing, or just commercial real estate, or destroying them, whatever, anything other than what they've been used for, that would seem to, when travel does pick back up, if it goes back to 2019 levels at some point, you're going to have a hotel shortage, just because hotels typically operate with 60 to 70% occupancy is what they're kind of going for. They, rarely are hotels 100% full. They kind of go about 60% rates where they're at. If you take out a decent percentage of the hotels, that kind of shifts the model and would raise prices for everyone else.
Absolutely. So it raises prices in the sense that to replace the older inventory that's been repurposed, you're building new properties, and generally those properties are going to be priced higher. So yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, when you build a brand new Motel 8, it's going to be a certain price point as opposed to like a brand new Wyndham, right? And so, you still have that price disparity. But you're just sort of repurposing the old inventory, and I mean, I think, to your point about the demand, I don't think that the inventory, or I don't think that the argument is to take the inventory offline. I think it's to rebuild it just with newer properties.
Okay, so you're saying that get rid of them, you get rid of 100 properties for lack of a real number, and then replace them with 75 properties that 75 locations, but they can have basically the same amount of rooms because they're taller or bigger or wider or whatever.
I mean, it's not the exact conversation, but I mean, this might be a good lead into something else I know we were going to cover. I mean, look at, so in tandem with what has happened in the hotel space this year, look at what's happened in the construction in the lumber space this year. And I know that's something that you were talking about on LinkedIn a little bit, these last couple of weeks about the incredible increase in lumber prices. I mean, I think I read a couple of reports that said that this year was unlike any other in lumber price history, and lumber's been around a long time building stuff. So
yeah, and I got a lot of comments on that. I was curious because your comment is anecdotal, and then I wasn't sure if you're kind of spoofing there or not, because what was your comment about? I meant to ask you about that. What were you getting at?
Yeah, so on the side, with 2020 and everything, one of the things that I've sort of taken on is, I wouldn't call it woodworking, but doing some fun stuff with a little bit of woodworking, and so I'm more intimately familiar with the price of 2x4s. And being out in Midland, I mean, 2x4s, I'm sure they sell everywhere like hotcakes, but I mean they fly off the shelves out here, and the price nearly tripled in 4 months. Really? Yeah, I mean, and it's leveled out a little bit now. It peaked, probably October, September, and it's leveled out a little bit now. But I mean, it went up quick, and for no other reason other than what the market has been doing is kind of what I can see. It's not like we're running up against a tree shortage.
Well, yeah. So the thing I found interesting about the lumber deal is that, if you're building houses, what does it take, like 6 months to build a house, 8 months, depending on where you're at, 9 months, maybe something like that, 6 to 9 months, right? Okay. So if you're building a house and you start a house in, September, and then you go to buy the 2x4s in October when the price spike happened, there's two of them in the last, 10, 12 months. What does that do to the builders? Because, they were going to sell the house for, X amount of square foot. And if the price has gone up, 3X a 2x4, that's got to be absorbed somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think the good thing is that incremental price in lumber probably doesn't move the price of constructing a house all that much, right? When you're talking about the aggregate. And so I think a lot of that lumber cost is probably just sort of absorbed into, I mean, yeah, it's more expensive, but not to an incredibly great degree.
Kyle Souza, I think he's quoting.
What did I do? So Kyle, actually, since you jumped in here, and Ryan maybe even better than I do, let me tell you that the reason I said that is because I just didn't want to see the face that Ryan has right now on when I said it, and so I disqualified it. I was like, if I say it this way, he won't actually give me shit for saying that I'm like getting into woodworking. So if I had just said it out loud, I know. Yeah, so thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for listening. Appreciate you being here. Hope you're having a good Monday afternoon. Oh my Lord, this is. What?
It's not me, it's you. It's not me, it's you.
I know. No, I know. Believe me, I know. You and everybody else in my life, I know. Believe me.
Oh, I did get some feedback. A lot of people saying though, what you were saying. Whoa, 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 Kyle, my man.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen. Thank you.
It's me. It's not you, it's me. Wait. Oh, gracious.
Kyle, I call Ryan entirely way too much. I may just start replacing some of those calls and calling you instead.
I did see several people that alluded to what you're saying is, home improvement projects, building a deck, woodworking, even though they're not woodworking, things like that. A lot of people were just kind of going in there, doing a lot of stuff, which is interesting because if that has really shifted the market that much, it's just surprising that much home improvement type stuff has gone on. Like you wouldn't expect that many decks to be built. So I wondered if that's true. It's kind of this anecdotal kind of temporary flux. How tight really is the lumber market on a normal week? You know what I'm saying? Like how?
I mean, maybe
based upon.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the beavers were just smoking a lot more pot this year, and they just weren't doing anything. I mean, I don't know. How much of the lumber in this country comes out of like California and Oregon? I mean, how much are they just lighting up?
I don't know. And I'm assuming the lumber mills they were essential workers, though, right?
I would think so. Yeah.
It wasn't like they were. We had a shortage of lumber because they couldn't work. It was just an increase in demand. So, anyways, okay. Speaking of houses, lumber, and things that we don't need in our lives, Airbnb. Okay, that was a shot at Airbnb. I'm sorry, Airbnb. I like you.
Ouch.
I like
what did Airbnb do to you? Jeez. And I was going to call him after we had this glowing review and ask him for a little bit of sponsorship money, but okay, that went up in smoke. What's you got?
I just talk, Ben. I'm a talking head. I don't mean don't let the facts. I don't mean most of what I say or say most of what I mean. So there you go. I mean, I was laughing at you earlier and you got mad at me. And so I'm not going to laugh anymore. This is Serious Ryan reporting from Channel 9 News. Ben, what do you think about
it? That was actually pretty good. That was like John Gruden, like John Madden-esque. That was pretty good.
The Airbnb IPO. So I'm torn over the IPO in general, not Airbnbs, but the IPO market in general. We have basically 50% of the companies, 50% amount of publicly traded companies that we did in the mid-90s. Okay. And so when you hear of IPOs, they've kind of become the big sexy thing. Well, you would think that if you hadn't looked at those numbers, you would think, okay, here are these big sexy IPOs, and there's a lot of publicly traded companies like there always has been. But that's not the case. There's fewer companies. Now, it is on the uprise since 2014, I think, what the number is. Anyways, so there are more publicly traded companies. But the ones that go bad would seem to have a bigger impact on the stock market, not necessarily how the market's moving and trading, but companies wanting to go public, because if you keep having these big flops, or companies that we don't need to go public, will companies continue this model, and do they need to keep going public? Can't you just get capital in 2020 without having to go to an IPO?
All great questions. Excuse me. All great questions. I think that, yeah, I mean, the liquidity market is incredibly volatile right now, and I think we're about to see it reset. Especially so. Take the energy space. I mean, the energy space. You've seen that live in action this year. Going forward, there is no more Wall Street money available to our industry in total. It's just not going to happen. There are going to be likely some mineral funds that will go public, but outside of that, there's certainly not going to be any public money that's going to be put behind some new venture anytime soon. And so. Sorry. When you look at that, when you look at the innovation, the impetus there, it's going to have to be private dollars. When looking at the IPOs in grand scale, I think, I mean, you're absolutely right. One of the incredibly complex things here is, so you and I were talking off air earlier today that the SEC is in the motion or in the works of sort of relieving some of this mandate to have to raise the money, raise the IPO money privately before, through the investment bank prior to going public, and can actually raise it on the exchange live now. And I think that those are dangerous waters, only in the sense that that's sort of, can be rife with scams and things of that ilk. And so kind of how do you regulate that? I think there is a responsible way to regulate that. Unclear, what that looks like. But I think that the net of releasing the ability for people like you and I and people listening to the podcast to invest in an IPO of a company prior to the money being or prior to the company being released to the public in this sort of model like we currently do can be fantastic. I mean that's the winning seat. I mean that's where that's the sort of thing when I think about the American dream, it's it's being able to put some money behind something and ride the enormous upside, where at current the structure is even the wildly successful companies like Airbnb, if you were in the Series A or the Series B or one of the seed rounds of Airbnb, you just made not life-changing money, not generation-changing money. I mean, you're talking about dynasty-changing money overnight. But if you buy the stock, once it goes public, you're going to get you're likely to get a good return long term. But you're right, and so the game is rigged way over here, and I think these moves move it a lot closer to the center.
Okay, I'm trying to find this chart. And then I've been scrolling since you've been talking, so I have been listening. But I wanted to find it. There's a chart that talks about the amount of institutional money that's on the sideline, and it's still a significant amount of dry powder that is sitting there. And so, it's not. So I would say that yes, obviously, as a free market guy, we should have access to be able to invest in whatever we think my or your or Kyle or whoever's risk tolerance. You should be able to go and risk your money, and if you lose it all, then as long as fraud wasn't committed, you weren't lied to or anything like that, then that's the risk you should be able to take. So I agree with that. But I am curious that the public going public now, the public pressure seems to be a little bit different. So if Airbnb, just to use them, and I'm not saying this will happen to them, but if Airbnb starts, if an unpopular group out there, whatever they are, I'm not will play right or left, but this unpopular group starts renting Airbnbs, okay? And it becomes known that these groups travel the country and they're not really doing anything. They're just not popular. There will be stock pressure from the market to not allow Airbnb to rent to those type of people anymore. And so I'm not sure. I'm curious about I agree with the ability to invest, but I am curious. Do we still need as many companies being public? Because you can get capital from other places. You could find investors a lot easier now on Twitter and LinkedIn and everywhere else in the world. Or is it just kind of the sexy thing to do, and we're still kind of caught in that model?
Yeah, that's a really complex issue. When starting to talk about sort of where and how and when does a public company bend to the will or to even to the narrative of the public view or its stockholders. I think that's a tough conversation to have in short. I think that's one of the dangers of going public, right? You're serving a different master. The game is now, what is my stock price as opposed to what am I doing as a company to benefit the people that are involved in the company? And I think that by definition changes the conversation fundamentally enough that I think that's something. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think that's one of the reasons that you and I are both independent. That's one of the reasons that you and I both own our own business, because by going to the other side of the fence, you're playing someone else's game. You're playing in someone else's arena. And that's just, that's, for me, that's not a recipe for success.
So let me ask you this. And to my knowledge, there's no way for public companies to limit how many shares you buy of their company in the sense, if there's 1 million shares available and they're all for $1 and no one wants to buy them and you start buying them up, you could theoretically buy all those up. There's no mechanism for them to control that other than the company themselves buying up the shares, right?
To my knowledge, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be beneficial, I think, for the publicly traded spaces is for these companies to then be able to limit how many shares institutions or individual investors could buy, because if you had 1 million people who all own one share, well, let's not get into some of this stuff because just let me hear me out. If Ben Simmons Inc. said 1 million people can buy my share at $1 a piece, well, then his risk of being pressured by various groups is a lot smaller because there's 1 million individual investors. Whereas if there's 16 investors that own 37% of the available stock out there, then those 16 investors could really put pressure on Ben. And so I'm curious to see if we'll see some measures like that as publicly traded companies don't be hijacked by people that don't have the same interest that they do.
Wait, is this the lead into the conversation I've been wanting to have for a long time? Do you have Carl Icahn where I can waiting in the wings to come on the podcast and talk about corporate rating? Because that would be awesome. Because that's what you're talking about. I mean, is he coming on?
Carl texted me. He's going to be coming next year. He said he's not quite ready yet.
Fair. I don't blame him. It's December 28th. He's busy.
Yeah,
we'll get him next year. It's okay.
Unlike us, he's probably taking off like a month.
So one of the interesting, the reason actually I brought up the Airbnb IPO earlier this week with you was actually for a different reason. For those of, well, actually, I'm not going to preface it. I'm going to throw it to you before I do anything here. So the Airbnb went public. They announced, and their investment bank went public at $68 a share. It opened on the very first day of trading that morning at, don't quote me on this, but I think it was $122 a share. Now, what that means is that the Airbnb as a company actually way undersold their company. They missed the profit margin. They missed their money by they missed. Sorry, apparently I'm hitting the mic. I apologize. Thank you, Ryan. I don't know.
Kyle sent that to me. He said, "Smile, you're on TV."
Oh, gee, that's big. I'm surprised he has our faces that big. That's aggressive.
Thank you, Kyle.
So I think that that's really fascinating that they missed the mark that widely. That means that rather than so that the market would have supported an open closer to that 120 mark, and they were booked at 68, and so the banks got basically all that revenue in the middle there, which is a absolute windfall. So I think it's fascinating that one of the other pieces of this IPO puzzle, and the reason I bring it back to want to bring it back to that is that for a long time the investment bank, while they're incentivized to fill the book and while they're incentivized to pitch the company, they're incentivized more so to undersell the company and make sure that the orders are filled, as opposed to getting the most amount of bang for the buck for the company. And by sort of reversing that trend and allowing these companies to go public on the exchange, then you get market when the market gets to set the market, and you realize all those returns, as opposed to in Airbnb's case leaving, and I don't know what the number was, but I mean it was a phenomenal amount of money, like on a dollar amount of money that they left on the table just overnight. So here
it is. So it's 68 on December 10th when it's listed, and then by December 10th, same day, is 144.71, and then right now it's trading at 148.61. So it actually went higher. It went up to 160 almost, 170.
Yeah, I think it opened at 122 and closed at 148. But yeah, I mean,
I'm on my phone. Yeah, probably
right. Yeah, I mean, regardless, they left a phenomenal amount of money on the table. And yeah.
The key there is because they have to hold it for 90 to 100 days, something like that. So as long as let's just make the math easy here. If it opens at 10 and it goes to 100, and then 90 days or 180 days, it's down to 50, then they can sell off a portion between, even if it goes back down to 50, they worked it out pretty well, because 50 minus 10 is still 40. So 40 times shares, right?
If you guys saw the Matrix happening live in front of your face like Ryan did, you're tracking along.
But that's your point, is that it doesn't behoove the bank to set the price properly.
No, it behooves the bank, and it benefits the bank to fill the order book and to complete the investment, because when they fill the order book, their job is done. Then they go public. Then they put it out to the exchange. And to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you get into the granular detail, this doesn't actually net mean that they lost that money, because there is that ride along, and they can't actually sell. I mean, so there's.
But no. What I'm saying is that if the company's worth, in the bank's mind, 50, okay, a share. I can hear myself echoing. I don't know if you changed the thing on your end. If the company's worth 50 a share, but the IPO comes out at 20, right? Then the bank it's reasonable for the bank to presume that the shares will go up in price. Okay, if they set the price at 50, it's reasonable to presume that the shares might go down, because the Wall Street might feel like, ooh, this is too close. Like, we're going to sell this off, or it just stays flat. It kind of trends along. So if the bank gets it to go up substantially, even if it comes back down by the time that there is an ability to sell off or whatever, a lot of the money has been made in that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, that's no way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, disagree or what?
No. Yeah. So let's see.
We have WeWork.
Yeah, I decided that that's not a story I want to touch today. Oh my word, that's only other than, again, I mean, just like we talked about, if you've got Trump's accountant, on speed dial, if you give me that contact, I mean, if you have the playbook for how Adam pulled off the WeWork, like, got me, I definitely want to know about that. But other than that, I think the more interesting thing is kind of going into starting to talk about some market trends for next year. But before we get into that, talking about one of the major trends this year, obviously with coronavirus, but was the influx of working from home and Zoom meetings and all of that. I'm curious what you think about I think for a while you've worked from home, but I mean, for a while there you were going in the office pretty consistently, and so now this year, having worked from home full time, sort of what has that been like for you? But also, what might we see in sort of some business trends to maybe address that? What are maybe some business opportunities to attack that that might be available kind of for people listening? What are you thinking?
Well, so tackle it two ways. As far as working from home, I love it. I think it's the best thing. Now I don't have to have a team of 47 people that I have to work with on a daily basis. That might change the dynamic. As far as the business opportunities moving forward, what I think is going to be interesting is how many people, because this is where it's hard to separate the news versus reality. How many people really left New York City? How many people, and not left like as in moved to where they could catch the train to town? I'm talking like they gone. They done gone. They moved out. How many people have really shifted from where they can no longer commute for their job, is how I'm going to say it, because that is where, if you could locate those spots. So let's say I do not live in the DFW Metroplex, as Ben likes to remind me. I live about 45 minutes south of Fort Worth. Okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that our little county here had an 80% uptick of growth compared to year over year, compared to what it had last year. That's where you're going to find opportunity, where the local small businesses can no longer service at the same level that they could their existing customer base, right? So now I would say restaurants, but too soon. I don't know, dry cleaners, what CPAs, lawyers, whatever. You can look at small businesses like maybe pool repairs, stuff like that are in small communities, and they kind of had their little business that was doing well, but now you see an influx of people, and they had to figure out how to deal with this. New apartment complexes could be built, stuff like that. So I think that's, if I was trying to be strategic, I would try to figure out, where have you seen people move that's too far to commute? So these people are going to stay there, and how do you deal with that, or how do you serve those people?
You build a whole system of hyperloops. Call Elon, get him on it.
The Boring Company.
Yes.
What do you think
about the Boring Company, or about working from home?
No, about you said business opportunities. What would be yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a whole niche industry that's going to spin off in I think that I think there's a lot of certain jobs, certain roles that now, if you're in a position of power and you're desired by the company and you're interviewing, like you have a position of power of, I'm only going to take this position if I work from home. I think that now has potentially become something, a negotiation point. And as that continues to develop, and that trend continues, I think you're going to see a whole cottage industry of basically companies that their role. So how there's companies that run like HR and companies that run different services for these large firms. I think there's going to be whole firms that their sole job is to onboard work from home or remote employees. I think that there's a lot of support that's needed on the like IT and all of that. With the privacy and security and that whole deal. I think there's a litany of things in sort of the enterprise space. Just kind of building that infrastructure out to be able to facilitate all of that work from home. And that's, I know that's super broad, but there's a lot there that I think a lot of the people, if Kyle is listening, I think that there's, some things, and the one or two other people, listeners, that you can apply whatever skill set you have currently, or, whatever market you're in currently to, potentially make a pivot to kind of, play off that space. I think there's a whole new customer base, really.
So I'm curious because I kind of disagree with this. I'm curious why do you think that's the case? Like, because let me tell you why. I disagree first. My thing would be is that much like with the technology that you and I are using is podcast technology, essentially, right? Podcast mic, webcam. I got the headphones. This is stuff that's already out there. Now, it might not be the most comfortable for working at home, and of course, there's a billion different mics, stuff like that. But a lot of the technology to work from home is already there. So, what would be
I'm not talking about like the independent stuff. I'm talking about, so let's say as an example, there's a litany of them, but let's say that 20% of Chase Bank employees in 2025 are working from home, or 40% of the engineers in the country are now working from home, or those sort of things. I'm talking about like kind of enterprise, like larger corporations. On the solo side, you can do anything you want, but
Slack or some kind of technology based tool for workflow enhancement, I guess is what you're saying.
All types of different onboarding. Like I mentioned, IT and internet protection through account setup and integration and cloud based data transfer. The kind of across the board. There are all of those things are happening, but not nearly at the scale and with the sort of privacy and security needs in mass. It's one thing to have the ability for all of your employees to travel and go places, and you got to accommodate when they're out. It's a whole nother ball game if your entire IT is a bad example. Your entire engineering department is off site, right? Mm-hmm. Like or something of that ilk. When you're talking about a company of like 10, it doesn't matter. When you're talking about a company of 500 or 10,000, it starts to make a huge difference.
So I think this debate is going to be predicated on how fast the vaccine is rolled out and how comfortable people are with the vaccine. And so the messaging from top down here is important, because if you say, Ben, you got the vaccine, but you still got a social distance, then guess what? I'm not coming to work because I can still get coronavirus, and I can still spread it to my family and this, that, and the other. And I think the employees would have a little bit of pull there. But if the messaging is you get the vaccine and you got to come to the office because now you can't spread it anymore, you can't get it, I think we're going to see some folks with commercial real estate properties are like, hey, you got to get your butt back to this office.
So if you're the employer, mm-hmm. and you have the option of paying drastically reduced rent, drastically reduced utility bills, drastically reduced cost for because your office space is drastically smaller because your workforce is working mm-hmm. from their home, you take that option all day. What I'm saying, by the way, has nothing to do with anything coronavirus related or vaccine related whatsoever. That was certainly the impetus, but I'm talking about people that were forced to go into the office that never sort of saw the other side of the coin of being able to work from home. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that really enjoy the working from home much more, and they're going to bargain for that. And then conversely, I think there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to look at the drastically reduced cost and some of the other efficiencies, and they are also going to be advocating for these certain positions like marketing. Work from home. What the hell do we care? If you want to come in the office, great. If you want to work from home, be my guest, because there's a net benefit. The benefit is not only just for the person with the job. There's also tangible company benefits for having a reduced headcount in the office. Now, it's not right for everyone. It's not right for every company. It's not right for every role. But I think there's going to be a marked change in that in the next couple of years. You don't agree?
Well. Okay, so I think there's, it's kind of like you're saying, there's levels here. So if you're a struggling company and you're at the end of your lease and you're like, listen, folks can work from home and that's going to help our bottom line 15% over this year. We need that money. Then they're going to push for work from home as long as possible. So I think there's plenty of companies that will be like that. If you're a company who's doing well and you think that your production really slowed down in 2020 and you blame that on working at home, you're going to say, get the vaccine and get up here. The question has been, how have you handled that over the past 9 to 12 months, depending on the time frame, but it's 9 months right now. If you've been, and so that's why I think the vaccine narrative is played in here, because if you've told people you have to stay at home because, we don't, wellness, lawsuits, stuff like that, how the vaccine is viewed publicly and how effective it is will determine whether or not people could come. Now, I've seen plenty of articles that are saying already, they're kind of warning the public, you can lose your job for not getting vaccinated. So those articles are not coming out because a random timing. They're coming out because there are plenty of big companies who are passing word that they're going to try to bring folks back into their office. And oh, by the way, if you don't want to come and you don't get vaccinated, we can fire you. So I think there is kind of that momentum headed that way.
Definitely. I don't agree. On a number of different levels. I think that what you're talking about, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be forced to come back to work, but I think that those people are like, if you work at Chipotle, or if you work in like IT, or if you're a factory worker, or if your presence in the location is super important to the process. But going back to what I said before, I genuinely believe that there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to look at the benefits that they see, and they're not going to see the downsides that you're talking about. I mean, I think that
let's put a number on it. Maybe it's helpful. Let's just say of the 100% of employees that were going to work regularly in 2019, okay, let's just for argument's sake say 80% of those people were at home. Okay, so we have 20%. They're still there now. What percent? I'm just making up numbers so we can do the math here. I'm just trying to figure out how big of a disparity. So let's say 80% of the workforce is working at home that you're talking about. What percentage of them will stay at home?
But what? I mean, that's a weird framing, because like the number, like I understand that your point about picking a number, but 80% of working from home. I mean, that's like it's so much more closer, closer to the other side.
Okay, I don't care. Just pick a number, whatever. So what working from home, what percentage of them will stay home? If you had to, I know you don't know the number of working from home. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I don't have an answer into that framing, so I'll answer a different way. I think that there's going to be somewhere between 5 and 12 million people in the workforce that were working in a place that are now going to be working from home. I don't know what the ratio is there. I don't know what I don't necessarily know what the labor pool is.
164 million.
How many?
164 million.
Okay, so maybe I'm off by a factor of 2 then. So maybe closer to somewhere between 10 and 18 million.
Wow. So you went up, not down. Okay.
I think it's easily going to be somewhere between 5 and so actually given that number, I think it's easily going to be between 5 and 10% of the labor pool in mass.
Yeah, an additional 5, whatever. So of that 164 million, an
incremental increase of 5 to 10%. That's correct. And that's a thesis. If we can give me enough time horizon, because I can't commit to like that happening in 2021, because that's real quick. But if we give me enough time horizon, that's something I'm willing to put a little bit of money on, or put a bet on.
Yeah. So 5%, I can see 5%. I thought you were talking like 20, 30, 40% change. But at 5 to 10%, I think that's what I'm saying. That's why I want to put this numbers on. I think we're like closer there.
Sure, but I mean, think about that. I mean, that's 8 to 15 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think so 5 to 10 for me is super safe. Like I could absolutely see it getting closer to 20. I don't think you see like 25-30%. I mean, I think there's enough people that it's just axiomatic that the person has to be where their office is in order to do their job, that you can't do it. And so maybe the better conversation, and maybe we can circle back to this or talk about it another time, on air here. But out of the current pool, or out of the 2019 pool, I guess, that did work from home, how many more additional do we think? Because that'd actually be an interesting number. How many people in 2019 worked from home?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So what we're saying is that 2019 is X, and you're saying X plus another 5 to 10% of the total workforce, because we don't really know. Yeah, I understand. Right. Yeah. Okay. I think I can see 5% staying home, 10%. I think, I think the real question that I've wondered is, so if we didn't have the Fed backing corporations, how many companies, how much worse would the unemployment have been, right? It would have been epic proportions, right? Gargantuan, right? So as these companies start coming back, and people have been working from home, they've been doing this, that, and the other, will they look at cutting the fat, if you will, going, we can trim some jobs here, we can trim some jobs there, and so big companies can make more money with less people and less overhead from a real estate standpoint.
Happy New Year.
And just
this podcast is a little bit too on brand. We're a little bit too spot on every time. But yeah, no, I mean, yes. So no, seriously for a second though. I think I
could see 5 to 10% losing their job.
Yeah, that's easy. But unfortunately, that's yes, definitely. Oh Lord, I forget what we were talking about. I lost track. You distracted me.
I was saying that I could see 5 to 10% lose their job as a way to increase profit. So the whatever step at the Fed printing and not printing, that issue aside, the reason unemployment wasn't as bad as it should have been is because the Fed printed, right? And people start working from home. These there will be companies who will just close down offices because they're like, I don't need this office. To your point, people work from home. And then they're like, well, we don't really need these 30 employees here, and we don't need these 100 employees there. And
sorry, no, that thank you for that thought jog. No, I think that there's this narrative that kind of circulates around, a lot that, oh my God, like the machines are taking over. Oh my God, there's all these jobs are leaving. And it frustrates me that that's the narrative, because I mean, there's so many jobs that, there's a lot of humans that do jobs that a machine is just meant to do better. And yes, that means that person doesn't have that job, but doesn't mean that person is not employable. It doesn't mean that person can't go find another job. Doesn't mean that person can't go learn a different trade. Make a pivot that wouldn't be like a career change. I'm not advocating for this person having to go back to school, but I think there's a lot of transferable qualities and skill sets that, for as an example, not to pick on anyone that works the line at a factory, but if you work the line at a meat packing plant or something of that nature, that job can be done by a machine just so much better, and that person can go do something else which can be a benefit to other people in the society and actually bring some good, as opposed to just being and so I think the framing of the conversation is just weird in this sort of oh my God, we're all doomed. I think it actually opens up people. I mean, part of me, and you're going to laugh at this, but part of me being kind of into some of the arts and whatnot would love to see kind of more of this, maybe more of a renaissance of sort of renaissance of times, rather than so those people can get into more of thought experiments and kind of things. I don't know why you just put me on air. I don't like looking at my face this big. This is really big. Oh, that's bright.
You got mad at me for laughing at you earlier, and so you said I was going to laugh at you, so I went ahead and just put it there. I was going to mute myself and start laughing, so no one would know. It would only be you would know I was laughing at you, but no one else would know. I didn't want to get in trouble again.
I knew why you did it. I mean, like, yeah. Thank you for explaining it, though. I appreciate that. At least you're honest. I mean, that's important. So, yeah. Okay,
we'll talk about the arts thing because that's interesting. Because one of the things I was watching,
what thing?
The arts. You said the Renaissance of the arts. Oh. It's got to be the greatest time in the history of the world to be an artist right now.
Talk to me about that. Why do you say that?
Well, okay. So if you want to be, I don't think I have anything pulled up here, but I can probably find something. If you get on Instagram and like you're a Star Wars fan, so if you get on Instagram, there's people who make amazing paintings of Star Wars stuff, stormtroopers or battles or whatever. They sell these prints for 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 bucks. Now, I'm not saying that they're knocking down six figures. I have no idea, but I can tell you what, in 1982, you couldn't have done that. If you want to get on YouTube and talk about art or have a podcast about art, now is the greatest time in the history to be anything that you want to be, basically. And so to your point about working on the meat packing line or the assembly line, the problem is that we've been lied to for so long about why those jobs are gone and that it's better that they're gone because, as you say, Ben, listen, I like steak. So I do not want the assembly lines to end. I can't eat steak. However, I would much rather see Bob or Tammy on the assembly line figuring out how to go and do pool repairs or build pools, or those are good companies. Just to be clear, like those dudes knock down some jack, build docks, or all this stuff that someone stupid like me can't do. There's a lot of things that are benefit to society that are can be done better by humans. And if you're artistic, you can figure out how to build artistic docks that have a little swag in them, or whatever word is there. I don't know. But there's a lot of things that you can do now that you couldn't do. Like one thing that never talked about. I guarantee you, I will bet every dollar I have, there are more microphones sold now than there are in the history of the world. Think about this. In 1930, how many microphones were being sold? Well, how many radio stations were there? Right? It's pretty
12.
simple. Yeah, 12. Okay. There are microphones being sold daily. This microphone right here is this is the one that Michael Jackson sung Thriller on, I'm pretty sure. Okay, it's not the same one. Okay. Strike that for a second. Okay. God, I hate myself.
This is always a good Monday afternoon. This is great.
Same model of microphone that Michael Jackson sung Thriller on, or one of those. Nate told me that. Anyways. Oh gosh. Okay, I own it in my house. Like that's weird, right? And so the point is, and I don't know what kind of microphone you got. It's probably radio studio quality, even though you beat it up constantly while you're talking. And so. Oh, you got a blue. There you go.
What a Yeti.
Yeah,
nice. Hey, look at you. Well done. That was good. Yeah, it's Yeti blue. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a professional podcaster, so cool. But anyways, I'm saying that. So I've got a soundboard here that can do all kinds of cool stuff. I can play music anytime I want. Those are jobs that are available that weren't available in 1980, and if they were, they're available to a very few people. Now the world is your oyster until the government shuts you down in your house.
So, every once in a while, I have some sort of production project or some sort of editing or something that needs to happen. I don't know how to do any of that. I don't know. Actually, I think you've got some people that you used. I'll use in-house for that, but just like standing people that you contract to. But a lot of times I go on to Upwork and I hire people. I mean, I don't know if you've been on Upwork, but Upwork is a platform where I think actually you can do anything from like customer service and like an executive assistant type hiring through any litany of different production type artistic things. I mean, I think that some of those people likely make phenomenal amounts of money, and they the entirety of their workflow is based on the website. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, heck, that kind of thing wasn't available 10 years ago, much less 30.
Mr. Beast makes $1 bazillion by giving away money. His job is to give away. I'm not mad at the man. I don't watch his content regularly. I know who he is. I'm not mad at him. I'm just saying his whole job is let me just give away money, and he makes exponentially more.
What does he actually do? Can we talk about that for a second? Because I've never looked at it, but similar to you, I've seen some of his podcasts or seen some of his videos. Like, sort of curious. Do we know what he does? He doesn't. I know he gives away the money, but like that. But like, what is he like? How does he make his money? It can't just be.
Yeah.
Is it just the YouTube videos? That's it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he has sponsorship videos inside of YouTube, but yeah, it's all YouTube. He has 49 million subscribers on YouTube.
What are we doing wrong?
Why am I talking to you? I was on a good note. I was encouraging people, lifting them up. Now is the time. Upwork. Let's go. And then here you go. What are we doing with our life? Don't ask me that question, Ben. Don't ask me what I'm doing with my life. I don't know.
Don't let the facts.
Fire the music up. Let's get out of here. Ben, sign us off for 2020. The music's starting soon. I'm
just letting it play.
Folks, the end is nigh.